Welcome to the weekend edition of the news on DBS TV. Let's begin with the news from Cameroon. The 11th edition of the Cameroon Business Forum has been launched this October 22 in the country's political capital in Yaoundé. Grouping business persons, investors, representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and the Association of Cameroonian Entrepreneurs, the forum is presided at by the Prime Minister Head of Government, Chief Dr. Joseph Dion Goute. This year's edition is observed to have taken a hard punch in relation to the general turnout, with just 50 participants compared to the 2019 edition in Douala, which recorded 500 participants. 35 of the participants are from the private sector and 15 from the public sector. This number was retained to take part in the high-level business meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic and out of concern for compliance with barrier measures. The COVID-19 pandemic also inspires this year's Cameroon Business Forum theme, which is COVID-19, Proofing the Business Environment. This Thursday's meeting mainly involves an evaluation of the resolutions retained in the 2019 session, amongst which are boosting local production to reduce dependence on imports, as well as implementing financial reforms to revamp the economy. Participants also proposed ways to get Cameroon out of the COVID-19 and getting the economy back on track. The 11th session of Cameroon Business Forum that took place in Yaoundé on Thursday, October 22nd, rounded up with measures to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economic life of the country. Unlike previous sessions, this year's edition came with so many particularities. Only 50 participants attended. The session took place in Yaoundé and did not end with recommendations, as has always been the case in previous editions. Being a forum for dialogue between the state and the private sector, for 11 years and still counting, one finds it difficult getting palpable results from this come together. Cameroon business environment, away from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, has not been much better. Some economic experts point to many crises Cameroon encountered before the pandemic set in as reason for the dire economic situation. Others think the government is not helping matters either, with all forms of taxes and administrative procedures. For 11 years, very little has been noticed in the business world in Cameroon. It would therefore be time to rethink and re-strategize on giving the business environment in Cameroon the push it deserves if we are to attain the expected goals. Following a fire that broke out at the command post of the Bamenda Territorial Gendarmerie unit last Friday afternoon, Cameroon's minister delegate at the Presidency of the Republic in charge of defense has made a public statement aimed at clarifying the doubts and stipulations around the incident. There had been allegations that the fire may be related to the ongoing socio-political unrest in the northwest and southwest regions, pointing that the Gendarmerie post was set ablaze by separatist Ambazonia fighters. In a press release published on Monday, October 19, that is 3 days later, the Minister of Defense, through his head of communication division, Commander Atonfak Guemo Cyril Serge, dismissed allegations of the fire being caused by separatist fighters, indicating that it is linked to an electrical incident, not Anglophone crisis. He went ahead to state that the fire outbreak was caused by the sudden return of electric power in Bamenda after a power outage that led to a shock on the electricity meter supplying the building. The minister delegate at the presidency in charge of defense through this also reassured the populations of upstation Bamenda and the crisis-stricken regions of the smooth continuation of activities at the said Gendarmerie unit, noting its operational capacity has remained uncompromised. According to a release published on Monday, October 19, signed by the Secretary of State, Secretary General at the Presidency, Ferdinand Gongo, The government is rethinking a phone tax that went operational days ago. According to the release, it appears that the method of the tax payment has been submitted for review in the Prime Minister's office. Thousands of Cameroonians since then have been celebrating over this information, but others are questioning if the phone tax policy will completely be annulled. It remains unclear if the government will redouble efforts to get the taxes from importers or turn around to place it back on the shoulders of the final users, while waiting for the Prime Minister to submit a more appropriate mechanism for the collection of the said custom duties and other taxes following high instructions from the head of state. History will recall that the controversial phone tax was set to go operational on October 15, 2020. Accused of breaking ethical rules, Karimo, a cosmetic brand in Cameroon, has been given 48 hours to take down its publicities promoting voluntary skin bleaching. The advert shows a light-skinned woman majestically seated with 4 other people, all dark-skinned, at her feet and showing allegiance to her, accompanied by the message, "Put them at your feet." The controversial ad has struck the sensitivity of Cameroonians, sparking different reactions, especially complaints from many social media users. The government neither stayed silent as it reacted to the advertising campaign. The Minister of Communication, spokesperson for the government, published a press release on October 22 in which he criticizes the said campaign, which he says conveys a degrading message for people with black skin. Minister Emmanuel René Sadi further stated that it places judgment on people based on the color of their skin and therefore likely to undermine their dignity. The posters have been pasted in all the streets of major cities, including Yaoundé and Douala, as well as on social media networks. The Minister of Communication has thus given 48 hours to the promoter of the brand, Karine Mongwe, to remove all posters of this campaign, both on billboards and on the company's social media accounts. René Emmanuel Sadi, while emphasizing on the regulatory framework for advertising, also warned that the young Cameroonian entrepreneur, who has never hidden her support for voluntary skin depigmentation, will face the sanctions provided by the law on the issue upon failure to take down the controversial adverts. Violent protests are ongoing in Guinea after provisional election results showed President Alpha Condé was on course to win a controversial third term. Condé, 82, won twice as many votes as his first opposition candidate, Cellou Dalein Diallo, with 37 of 38 districts counted, according to preliminary results from the National Election Commission. Following uprisings from the announcement of the results, the government has deployed soldiers to assist the police to contain the riots. According to witnesses, gunfire was heard on Friday in the Sonfania neighborhood of Conakry, where Diallo supporters clashed with security forces. Opposition leader Cellou Diallo has alleged large-scale fraud and declared himself the winner of the election. Residents in opposition-dominated neighborhoods say that many people are restrained in their homes and that the police are using live ammunition instead of tear gas against protesters. Following the violence, at least 10 people, including 2 police officers, have been killed since Sunday's poll, according to the authorities. Other sources raise the figures up to 20 deaths. Internet connection and phone services have also been shut down in the West African nation. Following violent protests in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari has admitted that civilians have been killed in the worst violence in years. He says 69 people have died in protests against police brutality, adding that the deaths were mainly civilians, that is 51, but also included police officers and soldiers, being 18. The president announced the toll in an emergency meeting with former Nigerian leaders late Friday with aims of finding ways to end the unrest. In his statement, Buhari insisted that security forces had used extreme restraint in the dealings with protesters and instead blamed hooliganism for the country's worst violence in years. The president did not say whether security forces were responsible for the civilian deaths, but did note that 11 police officers and 7 soldiers were killed by rioters, taking the total number of fatalities to 69. He also said that another 37 civilians were injured in the unrest. President Buhari, earlier on in a national address on Thursday, did not mention the shootings that sparked international outrage. He instead warned protesters against undermining national security and law and order. He reiterated on Friday saying the government will not fold its arms and allow criminals continue to perpetrate acts of hooliganism. President Buhari's Friday statement is expected to instead further inflame tensions after Amnesty International reported soldiers shot and killed at least 12 demonstrators on Tuesday night as large crowds sang the national anthem. American President Donald Trump has announced that Sudan and Israel have agreed to normalize their relations and set aside decades of hostility. He announced this on Friday at the White House during a telephone conference he held with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. President Trump praised what he called a peace agreement. This agreement sidelines the Palestinians who have boycotted talks with Trump's envoys. Palestinians denounced the move as a new stab in the back. Trump said that he expects the Palestinians and other nations, including Saudi Arabia, to also agree to closer ties with Israel in the coming months. This effort is seen as a way to strengthen Israel's security, a priority for American Jewish supporters of Israel. Those supporters include conservative Jewish Republicans who make an important part of Trump's political base in Florida. This will be the third country where we are doing this, and we have many more coming, Trump said. The deal does not immediately entail full diplomatic relations like an exchange of embassies, but it is an agreement to start discussions over normalization with greater focus on economic and related matters. This deal marks the third such accord reached by the White House since August, and notably in the weeks leading to the U.S. presidential election. And as Europe battles with a second COVID-19 wave, French health authorities say that France has recorded over 1 million confirmed coronavirus cases since the start of the pandemic, becoming the second country in the Western Europe after Spain to reach that number of known infections. The National Health Agency said more than 42,000 new cases had been recorded in the past 24 hours as the second wave of the pandemic takes hold. Also, France has reported over 34,000 virus-related deaths, one of the highest tolls in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron had earlier on told the public to expect the virus to remain for several months while he visited a hospital near Paris. In a bid to stem the spread of the virus, French government has also expanded an overnight curfew imposed in 8 urban areas of France last week to include 38 more regions and Polynesia. The 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfews and other public health measures will last for at least 6 weeks, Macron said. More than 11,000 new COVID-19 patients have been hospitalized in the past week, including 1,714 more who are in intensive care, according to the National Health Agency. Experts say the real numbers of the infections are probably much higher than the ones governments around the world are reporting because of a lack of early testing of the pandemic, asymptomatic cases, and other issues. With that, we have come to the end of today's weekend edition of the news on DBS TV. Thank you for being with us and keep watching DBS TV and have a lovely weekend.